Hi guys, I'm Lauren. Welcome to my channel. It's so good to see you guys. Thank you guys. Oh my gosh. Thank you for just dropping on in and clicking on this video. It is great to see you. If you've watched some of my other videos, oh my gosh, thank you so much. You guys just blow my mind every day. Thank you so much. If you have been watching my videos, you might have noticed here and there that there is something that I've had. Yep, right here. Right here. I don't know if you can see it. Hopefully you can see it. I have an empty fish tank. Yes, I do. Why, Lauren? Why do you have an empty fish tank? Well, thank you so much for asking. I have an empty fish tank because it's gonna be a terrarium. And we are finally, after me waiting like a month and a half, okay, are gonna finally fill it. We're gonna go around the room, we are gonna gather up plants, and we are gonna plant them in this terrarium. And I don't know, it might look banging, it might look amazing, right? It might. I don't know. I've never done it before, so we'll see. So if that sounds like something that you would enjoy and you want to see this planty awesomeness or total train wreck, who knows, then stick around.
Make sure to subscribe if you're all about the planty awesomeness.
Well, let's get into it. I think I'm gonna move you around and like pan to a downward view. I'm gonna take it off the bookshelf and get everything kind of squared away. But yes, we're doing this. If there's anything in particular that you think I should add to this terrarium, definitely drop it down in the comments below and I will go hunt it down and figure it out, okay? Because I'm so stoked. Everything needs to go in here. Everything. But everything won't fit. So help! Alright.
Before we begin, I really wanted to give a huge shout out and thank you for all this inspiration to Ben of Worcester Terrariums and to Tanner over at Serpa Designs. Both of them have amazing YouTube channels and that's where I got a lot of this information from, so thank you guys. Alright guys, let's get into it. I got this fish tank at Walmart for $14. It was labeled as a display item and does not come with a lid, so I will have to account for that later and figure out some type of lid, but it was an amazing deal for a 10-gallon tank, I feel. I am using perlite as the base layer. I'm using it for the drainage layer. Per multiple recommendations, I probably should have filtered it out first with the little sifter, but I didn't get a chance to do that and I'm hoping it won't make a difference. But if it does, I'll let you know. So that is what is going on there. I am going to be using my little rake that I got for free when I purchased a mat from Amazon, a repotting mat from Amazon. I'm just smoothing out all of the perlite, trying to make it as even as possible. I did just eyeball the amount of perlite I put in. I did not take any measurements. I don't know the intricacies of that, to be honest with you. I just went with my gut instinct on this and I made it the same height as the bar that wraps around. You can see it's the same height as that black bar. Next, I am going to be adding in the charcoal layer. This is a filtration layer. I wasn't sure if I should add it before or after what would be the mesh layer, so I'm adding it before what I consider the mesh layer. So I figure if the water makes it through the mesh layer, then it's going to be filtered through the charcoal before it gets to the rock drainage layer underneath, which is how it perpetuates the cycle. Again, this is probably something that I should have. I wore a mask for it because all of this dust flying around everywhere. I probably should have wet this stuff beforehand and sifted it beforehand, but I did not. So if you do it, you should. So here is an overview of what the charcoal looks like after I've put it in. And then here you can kind of see how it evens out. I need to smooth out a little bit there. I see perlite sticking through. I don't have mesh for this big of a tank, so what I am gonna use, per Serpa's recommendation in this case, Tanner over at Serpa Designs, he says that we can use a layer of sphagnum moss for the mesh in between the drainage. And that's gonna kind of help keep the soil from going through and seeping into the drainage layer underneath. So that is why I'm placing all of this damp sphagnum here. It will also help to retain more moisture and make a more humid environment in the terrarium, which I am hoping is a good thing. Alright, so I laid it all down and out, and I'm just kind of firmly patting it down, and I'm covering and making sure that there's no open areas and that any soil would have to go through the sphagnum in order to get down to that drainage layer. Remember, this is replacing a actual filtered mesh, so that is why I'm doing that. So this is for the soil. I have worm castings in here, and then per the recommendation of the two groups that I referenced down below, I cut up the sphagnum moss, which I think is just the ultimate game changer. Like, those guys are brilliant. I cut up the damp sphagnum moss. This is New Zealand sphagnum moss, in case I didn't say. And I'm just going to put that in with the worm castings. Again, I'm eyeballing it. I am not in any way, shape, or form measuring it. I pre-dampened it and then used my scissors to cut it, and I'm just squeezing it, draining out all of that extra water, and just kind of putting it in there. Next, I will be adding horticultural charcoal. This is because it can soak up moisture, it can retain nutrients and slowly leach them back in, and it adds more drainage and filtration to the soil. I'm also using bark. I'm using this orchid bark. It's a little chunkier than I would like, but I'm just gonna make it work. I'm thinking florist floor. In a lot of terrarium mixes, they use lava rocks and pumice and those types of things, and unfortunately they're too expensive for me to order and have them delivered, and they're not carried in my local stores that I can find. So I'm just kind of substituting what I can here. And then I'm just going to mix all of this up as much as possible, and then we're going to add our layer. I do recommend using a small shovel to mix this instead of trying to use the rake, because it was getting stuck on the rake there. Alright guys, time to add that layer in. It smells wonderful. It feels so great. If you get a chance to experience this, you've got to try it. You really do. Not to sound like a soil nerd, but oh my god, it feels amazing. And I'm just going to be putting it in here for you. Well, not for you, but for the terrarium. I'm just going to be putting it in here. And I'm just adding a nice layer to it so that way I can add the different plants to the terrarium afterwards. And I have a little bit of wiggle room, and I can always add more soil over them as I plant them in. And here is a better view of that for you, so you can kind of see how much it's filling up. I don't know if you can really tell, but you can see that I covered everything. There's none of that sphagnum. So I'm going to possibly put some of those. Here is some peperomia. I've got some scindapsus. This one actually is the only rooted one other than these two begonias that I have. They're begonia leaf propagations. These are some various pothos, and then I've got some more peperomia there. I've got Fittonia, I've got more begonia, I've got a Hoyabella, I've got a rabbit foot fern, I've got a fig. I'm gonna try this peperomia pink lady leaf in there, and we'll see if that'll work. Here is everything, and I'll try to label it for you as I put it in. And we're just gonna kind of randomly do this. I chose to not use so many full-grown plants because I'm trying to keep this as contained as possible and not have a lot of extra soil, so that way I can really test out this mixture and see how it does in this method. So, and if I have a bunch of soil and possible pests, etc. in there, then that can totally ruin the entire thing. Then I'll never know. So, but I'm kind of putting this towards the back in the corner because I figure it's going to grow really lush and full. Maybe eventually I can put a board back there and then have it grow up it, which would be really neat. But for right now, let's just get them rooted and growing and make sure that the mixture is going to work. And I will do an update video later. I am just going to be going out of town soon, and I'll do a video about that. But I'm just trying to get all these potted up right now. In here, I really wanted to do this. And I'm just gently placing them in that layer of soil. I am not going further down into that layer of sphagnum moss. I do not want to be breaking that barrier. And this is a Hoya Bella. I actually changed my mind on just putting it in the soil because Hoya are more epiphytic than the others. So they're not terrestrial, so they don't need the soil and the dirt as much. So I am going to put some bark down to imitate a tree, and then I'm going to put some sphagnum moss down to give it that moisture retention and make it feel like it's actually on a tree, and hopefully it's going to root. This was one of my birthday plants, and I really want to make sure this lives. So there we go, all comfy and cozy. I'm excited to see what that does. If it roots really well there, then maybe I'll stick it on a board or something and try to get it to go up. This is Peperomia napoleonites. It's actually a wonderful plant if you guys get a chance. So I'm just gonna stick that right in there. They are prolific growers. They propagate so easily. I have no doubt that one's going to make it. This is the Friendship Pilea. So that one, oh, Moon Valley Pilea, I'm sorry. Moon Valley Pilea. So I'm going to stick that over there. It's a little cutting, but I think it'll do good over there. Here we have a creeping fig. They do not get very big, so I'm going to kind of try to put that towards the front, and maybe it'll add a little pop of color. And I'm hoping it likes to root that way. That one I'm just kind of guessing on, because the other figs that I've dealt with have rooted in water and sphagnum. So, and this is a Fittonia cutting. They root amazingly well in a terrarium setting. They really do. And I've done them in just sphagnum moss, and they have rooted beautifully. Just sphagnum moss in a Ziploc bag, and they are just, oh, they take off, guys. If you have one that's dying, you want to save it, definitely try that. So they're gonna love it in here. I have no doubt with that. And I am just trying to tuck them around in different places. They're going to grow a little bit slower than these big leafy ones. So I'm trying to give a pop of color and try to layer the foliage so that it looks more jungly. This is a rabbit's foot fern. They are epiphytes as well. They don't really like to be... They like humidity, but they don't like to be in the soil too much. So this is going to be a test of how well the soil is moisture retaining, and if it rots it, then I can adjust for those issues and whatnot. It's just kind of a test fern. So I'm going to tuck it in here. It adds a little bit of greenery. Would like to add a lot more ferns later, but this is just the testing phase right now. I want to see how the substrate does. I want to see how it works. Yeah. And this is Peperomia verticillata, I believe. And I'm just going to take off these bottom leaves. It doesn't need a node. I just don't want them rotting underneath. And these are going to grow up. They're not going to get bushy unless I trim them. The more I trim them back, the more bushy they will get. But they kind of add an extra bit of length back here and a little bit of fullness, so I'm kind of interested in seeing how that's going to grow and if they'll grow faster than the Scindapsus. So I'm just kind of tucking them back here for a vertical look, I guess. Alright, next up, these are some Rex begonias. I leaf propagated them. I just leaf propagated them in sphagnum moss. They took a while to grow in the sphagnum moss, and I don't want to disturb their roots too much, so I am going to be keeping the sphagnum moss on this one as much as possible and just kind of tucking it down there. And I'm hoping this one likes it. We shall see. I don't know exactly what Rex begonia this is, and I want it to be humid, but I don't want it to rot, so I'm gonna kind of put the wood chips around it and we'll see. This is another Rex begonia. It's actually growing really well in here. And I think this one I will take off most of the sphagnum moss, and then we'll see how this one does. There we go. So you can see I took off most of the sphagnum moss. It's a cute little plant. It doesn't have very much of a root system. I'm hoping it'll be happier in here. We'll just kind of play around with this. This will add more of a bushy feature, and hopefully the colors will pop and add a little bit of contrast to that deep green of the Scindapsus behind it. This is that Peperomia pink lady leaf. These are hit or miss. Sometimes they'll take off and propagate like crazy, and then other times not so much. So it'll be interesting to see how it grows in here. And the more light you give it, the more pink, but you can see that it'll add a little bit of a sparkle and shimmer. I do not want this rotting, this leaf. I'm hoping it will propagate from the back or from the stem. So I am going to put some little wood chips just to kind of brace it up a little bit. They like humidity, but they'll also root in water. I have a whole propagation video on Peperomia if you need. I'll try to link that for you. This is a Begonia maculata cutting. It's just a leaf cutting. I don't know if the soil will be moisture retentive enough for it, but we shall see. So that'll be cool if it grows. It'll add an extra feature there. I might have to replant it in the back depending on if I get the Scindapsus to trail up or not. And that's just a little Peperomia hope cutting that I tucked in the back there in that corner behind the Scindapsus. That'll grow vertically as well. This is a maidenhair vine. I am not sure if it's gonna grow or not. They like a very moist environment. They like humid, and then they like their roots to be very, very wet. They don't like to dry out very much. They're not a water plant, but they definitely love their water. Think peace lily. This is another Peperomia. I'm not sure of the ID of this one. I don't recall, unfortunately, but I will try to find it for you and put it on the screen. But I'm hoping that these will kind of creep along on the ground and add a little bit more ground cover. I did not want to introduce any other moss other than sphagnum because I would have to collect it from my yard and introduce potential pests and invaders. All right, so here is an overview of what it looks like. I'm hoping it'll fill out more and it'll look pretty awesome. Can always go back and add stuff in. What do you guys think? I tried to add extra pops of color and texture. I know it's not multi-tiered and multi-layered, but I am experimenting with cuttings and just trying to figure out what's going to work best in my environment currently with this setup. So this is kind of an outside perspective of it. And then I'll put it back on the bookshelf and I'll give it a nice little grow light. And you guys tell me what you think.
Alright guys, let me know what you think. Let me know how I could have done it better, or if there's something that I need to change, or if all my plants are gonna die. That would be great. And definitely find me on Instagram, share your little fish tank terrariums, or if you make like the little geometric ball terrariums, or however you're getting your plants to look amazing and just kind of playing with your plants other than overwatering them. Guilty. Okay. Yeah, definitely share it. I'm at that awkward plant girl on Instagram. Share it down below and all that jazz. Definitely appreciate your time, and I will see you in the next one. Bye. Thank you so much.